For those who don't know me, I'm Pete Daly, CEO of the U.S. Naval Institute, and on behalf of the Naval Institute and AFCEA International, we welcome you to this panel session on From the Western Pacific and Asia. Our moderator for today's conversation with Admiral Takei is retired Admiral Tom Fargo. Born in San Diego, Admiral Fargo attended Coronado High School for 2 years and then finished high school in Sasebo, Japan. A 1970 graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, he retired from active duty after 35 years of service to the Navy and the nation. Since then, he's pursued a career of corporate leadership and public service. He currently is chairman of the board of Huntington Ingalls Industries. Besides this and other corporate boards, including USAA, he serves on the board of the Naval Academy Foundation, the Japan-America Society of Hawaii, the Iolani School Board of Governors, and the Friends of Hawaii Charities. As a four-star, he led the Pacific Command from 2002 to 2005, the largest unified command with responsibility across 100 million square miles of East Asia, the Pacific, and the Indian Ocean. He also served as commander of the 5th Fleet based in Bahrain and as commander-in-chief the Pacific Fleet prior to becoming commander of the Pacific Command. A career submariner, he was the 1989 recipient of the James B. Stockdale Award for Inspirational Leadership in command of USS Salt Lake City, SSN 716. At the Naval Institute, we know him as the model for the character Commander Bart Mancuso, USS Dallas, in the movie Hunt for Red October, which was still to this day our most successful book of the Naval Institute Press. Now to Admiral Takei, Chief of Staff, Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force. One of the very important goals for this year's West Conference was to seek a broader view that was not just U.S.-centric. Japan is a maritime nation and a critically important U.S. ally in a very strategic position in the Western Pacific. We are most honored that Admiral Tomohisa Takei, the 32nd Chief of Staff, Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, has agreed to participate. Born in the Japanese prefecture of Nagano, Admiral Takei was commissioned into the JMSDF in 1979, following his graduation from the 23rd class of the National Defense Academy. Admiral Takei is also a 1999 graduate of the U.S. Naval War College Command Course. After 35 years of service in positions of increasing responsibility, and after commanding at all levels, Admiral Takei took command of the JMSDF in 2014. As such, Admiral Takei leads the world's 5th largest naval power with over 120 ships. The Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force also maintains a large naval air force, including some 200 fixed-wing and 145 helicopters. In today's format, Admiral Takei will deliver prepared remarks, after which Admiral Fargo will facilitate a discussion. Time permitting, we'll take questions from the audience. Again, we are honored to welcome Admiral Tomohisa Takei, JMSDF, Chief of Staff, Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force.
So, Admiral David, thank you very much for the kind introduction. I am Admiral Takei, Chief of Staff, Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force. It is an honor to participate in the West 2016 conference. I did not expect to be the only non-US Navy admiral to attend. I was hoping to share the stage with at least a couple of other partners, but of course, happy to be here with the US Navy. However, I kept my promise with Admiral Daly that I would fly across the Pacific to be here. Just like a US Navy sailor, a JMSDF sailor never failed to keep a promise. Well, except for a promise to not doing too much on liberty. The main theme of this week's conference is how do we make strategy work? With this session theme is what is the view from Western Pacific and Asia. I cannot represent all the navies in the region, but I can explain the view from Japan, and I feel confident discussing how we support the US Navy's strategies. For more than 60 years, the high-end capability of and close ties with the US Navy and the JMSDF have served at the core of the US-Japan alliance. In fact, the strength of this alliance has helped ensure peace and stability across the Asia-Pacific region. As a result, I feel confidence saying our alliance with the US ensure the US Navy achieved its strategic goals in the region. Today, from the viewpoint of a JMSDF, I would like to discuss the strategic accomplishment influenced by the JMSDF and the US Navy alliance and where our alliance is headed in the future. First, I would like to talk to the history of Japan's alliance with the West. I feel understanding this history can make the future of the Japan-US alliance more effective and efficient. The main theme of my talk today. The following are my personal views and does not represent the official views of the Japanese government and the Ministry of Defense. Since Japan's modernization had started with the arrival of the Commodore Marshall Perry's Black Frigate in the mid-1900s. Frankly speaking, in our history, Japan walked on the path to the prosperity when Japan signed two major maritime alliances with the Western nations. The first with the United Kingdom, the second with the United States. On the contrary, Japan significantly slowed our national growth and prosperity when we allied with more continental and land-focused nations. With the arrival of Perry's Eastern Indian Squadron in Tokyo Bay in July 1853, Japan was forced to end 215 years of isolation. This opening led to Japan's rapid absorption of technology and ideas from overseas, which led to our fast-paced modernization. In 1868, the Meiji Restoration began, and with that, the Imperial Japanese Navy was formed. The Imperial Japanese Navy was modeled after the Royal Navy. However, we did not have the industry to support that modern Navy, so we relied upon the British technology and shipbuilding to equip our forces. In July 1894, only 26 years after its founding, the Imperial Japanese Navy crashed the King Imperial Navy in the Yellow Sea. At that time, the Chinese Navy was considered the strongest in the Far East. Of the 10 warships that fought the Chinese in that battle, only 2 smaller ships were constructed domestically. The remaining 8 were built in England or France. Due in large part of Japan's victory over China in the Sino-Japanese War, in 1902, the United Kingdom signed an alliance with Japan. Although the UK has supported China in the war, the Boxer Rebellion caught the UK's attention and they sought more allies in Asia. The UK wanted Japan on their side. At that time, Russia had also deployed its most advanced ships to the Far East. The number of Russian ships in the Far East had surpassed the UK. The UK's alliance with Japan and with our rapid military buildup helped restore that balance of power. Japan's growing sea power was the primary factor for the UK to conclude the Anglo-Japan alliance. Like the UK, Japan was a maritime nation dependent on freedom of the seas for its survival and prosperity. Following the opening of Japan to the world, we allied with the UK, a similar maritime nation. Shortly after that alliance, we won the Russo-Japanese War with a peace treaty negotiated by the United States. Later, as an ally of the UK, and despite public opposition, Japan deployed an 18-ship task group to the Mediterranean Sea during World War I. For nearly a year and a half, this task group escorted 788 Allied ships, transporting 750,000 people and rescuing over 7,000 sailors from ships hit by torpedoes. Although the Imperial Japanese Navy's contribution in the war was small compared to that of the US Navy did, it exceeded every other Allied forces Navy. Although somewhat forgotten today, these contributions, the Imperial Japanese Navy, were enabled by our early alliance with the UK and early relationship with the United States. The Anglo-Japanese Alliance Treaty accomplished what it was designed for. However, the harsh realities of international politics saw the treaty end after World War I. As British historian Ian Nish stated, the Anglo-Japanese alliance was more naval than military. The naval alliance was the backbone of this bilateral relationship and real core of the alliance. Japan's second treaty with a modern maritime nation was the Japan-US Security Treaty, concluded in 1951 and then updated again in 1960. Thanks to the US Navy, the JMSDF was able to grow from the ashes of the war, and now, I believe, we sail side by side with the US Navy as modern, capable naval force. If we have learned anything these last 64 years, it is that the strength of our relationship with the US Navy rests in maintaining the right level of the interoperability with our closest ally. The cooperative nature of the seas and naval operation requires a high level of interoperability to ensure an effective fighting force. As a professional mariner, our common maritime culture is totally different from air and ground corporations. We share the seas, whereas air and ground forces tend to want to divide their respective area among alliance and forces. Just like the early Japanese Navy was modeled on the Royal Navy, the JMSDF has been modeled on the US Navy, from basic seamanship to employment of modern weapons. Through our unique security relationship with the US 7th Fleet, the JMSDF has become a shield to the 7th Fleet sword. This relationship could not have been possible without JMSDF's employment of similar capabilities and systems like Aegis weapon system, P3C, and other common systems. This has allowed us to learn best practice from the US Navy. This bilateral training has vastly improved our capability and interoperability with the US Navy. This alliance was put to the test following the terrorist attack on the US on September 11, 2001. The JMSDF deployed our ships to the Indian Ocean in support of our coalition forces fighting terrorism. For the JMSDF, this validated the close bilateral training and cooperation we have with the US Navy. We were able to seamlessly integrate with all the navies supporting the coalition, to include NATO nations, thanks to the interoperable capability fostered by our close relationship with the US Navy. I want to highlight 4 lessons we have learned from our alliance history with maritime nations. First, a strong navy should be the core of the alliance between maritime nations. Those nations depend on the sea lines of communication for their security and prosperity. Second, modern cutting-edge systems and equipment combined with a technically proficient professional sailors raise the reliability of the alliance. Third, alliances are validated in crisis. Fourth, alliance technical interoperability is an imperative for coping with security challenges. The interoperability is tested every day in our cooperation and effort with partner navies. It is not just similar systems that ensure interoperability. Interoperability can be achieved through three factors: equipment, skilled operators, and proper procedures. Any system requires these three factors to ensure they can operate with another system. As a result, the ideal interoperability might be a system and infrastructure that operated based on the using similar equipment operated by sailors that are alike in mindset and skill set, with all forces using the same procedure and tactics. Before going to the topics, how to make the alliance work more effectively and efficiently, I would like to discuss the security situation in the Asia-Pacific. It is well understood that Indo-Asia-Pacific has become the engine that drives the global economy. As a result, the South China Sea and its approaches are vital economic thoroughways to ensure secure sea lines of communications. It is imperative these sea lines and international waterways remain open and free for the region to thrive. Unfortunately, there have been the territorial and sovereignty dispute among the nations surrounding these areas. These tensions have not been helped by the coercive action of some nations that have chosen to disregard international law and, in some cases, built artificial islands where before there has no territory to even claim. Those activities are not helpful in maintaining security in the region and a clear attempt to challenge the status quo that has allowed the region to prosper. Furthermore, the totalitarian regime in North Korea continue to create regional instability through their behavior, threat, and repeated violations of international sanctions. Outside of the nation states, non-state actors in Asia remain a threat in the region. Piracy and transnational crime remain a concern across Southeast Asia. The international community must continue to work together in preventing piracy. Additionally, the global reach of terrorist organizations like ISIS and the terrorist attacks across the region, one as recent as last month in Jakarta, will continue to challenge the Asia-Pacific. While the region has avoided many of the ISIS challenges that Europe currently faces, we cannot ignore the threat they pose across the region. The security issues faced by Japan and the United States range a broad spectrum of strength, speed, geography, and actors. Nearly every threat concerns the maritime arenas. Our Navy have an even greater expectation to continue to play a positive role in regional security. In my opinion, if we continue to focus on the strengthening alliance between our nations, it will reinforce the freedom of the region's sea and security in the Asia-Pacific. With the end of the Cold War, we saw some dynamic changes to the US-Japan alliance. Specifically, the crisis in North Korea and between China and Taiwan led the revised Japan-US guideline for defense cooperation in 1997. This better allowed Japan to respond to the security situation in and around Japan. This also led to more global alliance that supported regional stability and allowed better coordination with the international community. In April of last year, Prime Minister Abe and President Obama signed the newly revised 2015 defense guidelines. These guidelines stipulate our two countries will further strengthen the Japan-US cooperative relationship in peacetime. It enables the Japan-US alliance to play a more important role in the maintaining international peace and stability. With Japan's enactment of the new security legislation in March of this year, which will allow Japan to more seamlessly respond to challenges that range the broad spectrum of our alliance. So, how can the Maritime Self-Defense Force support the U.S. in adapting to this changing security environment? We have to become a better integrated force that continue to improve our interoperability with the JSDF and with the U.S. Navy. I want to highlight 4 ways we can do that. First, the JMSDF and the U.S. Navy have to continue to pursue high-end capability with cutting-edge equipment to face the threat to our forces. If we fail to get to the right capability, it potentially lead to a technical power vacuum which our enemies can take advantage of. The JMSDF has a tradition of following the U.S. Navy's lead on technological advancement in the maritime. We need to continue to work closely with the U.S. toward this end. Secondly, our interoperability is only as good as our sailors' abilities. We need to improve our sailors' skill level while fostering a mindset that understands the Japan-US alliance. The U.S. 7th Fleet is the most advanced fleet in the U.S. Navy. We have continued to try to keep up, but it has been a challenge. When comparing our two forces, I often feel we can barely see the 7th Fleet's mast on the horizon. However, we will continue to do everything within our ability to achieve our seamless interoperability. Today, we are moving from the maritime to domain like cyber and electromagnetic maneuver warfare. This may make it harder for us to keep pace with the U.S. Navy, but we are committed to doing just that. Thirdly, the improved sharing of techniques and procedure can further interoperability and improve the command and control of our forces. It is not solely the literal and verbal communication that is so important. We have to improve the tacit understanding between our forces. This understanding and communication between our forces is difficult to quantify, but it improved factor when we went to different cultures like Japan and the United States work together. Lastly, we have to continue to develop secure and integrated C4I networks that support the interoperability between the JMSDF and the U.S. Navy. The shared C4I system between our forces ensured smooth and effective operations. In general, I'm concerned if we don't adapt to the security environment, it can lead to the cracks in the alliance. One of our former ambassadors to the U.S., Mr. Ryozo Kato, when discussing alliance, compared them to a flower. He said, if you want to see the flower bloom, we have to ensure we give water to the flower every day. We have to continue to feed our flower of alliance and ensure it blooms its full strength. Over the last few decades, our two nations have made tremendous strides in our alliance. That strong relationship has produced countless supporters of Japan within the United States who are the U.S. servicemen and women and their families stationed in Japan. Nowhere was this more apparent that in the U.S. response to the Great Eastern Japan earthquake in March 2011. Next month, Japan marks the 5th anniversary of the Great East Japan earthquake. These disaster-hit areas continue to rebuild, and we continue to search our missing to provide our people some closure. On the occasion of that unprecedented disaster 5 years ago, those supporters helped rally some of the U.S. strong response and support to my country. Within hours after the earthquake occurred, the U.S. 7th Fleet immediately mobilized 22 ships, 132 aircraft, and about 15,000 personnel to support the JMSDF already deployed for disaster relief. It was the very beginning of the U.S. operations, and it was the symbol of hope to the people of Japan. The Ronald Reagan Strike Group played a pivotal role in the early phase of the operations. In October last year, the Japanese welcomed the deployment of Ronald Reagan to Yokosuka. The people of Japan had not forgotten what that ship had done for our country. We are forever grateful for support of the U.S. Navy, U.S. Marine Corps, and other services to Japan in this time of need. 2 months after the disaster occurred, an entire page of the Washington Times was dedicated to message of appreciation from Japan to the United States. They have even a message from Mr. and Mr. Abe, now Japan's Prime Minister. In Japan, we have a proverb, "Masaka no toki no tomo koso shin no tama." This roughly translates to "a friend in need is a friend indeed." The friendship American people showed us in the disaster aid embodied that proverb. I want to share the quote from the article in the Washington Times that discussed Operation Tomodachi. Arigato. Thank you, America, for the prayers you are praying, for the songs you are singing, and all the paper cranes you are holding, and above all else, for the sweat and tears your servicemen and women are shedding to help Japan survive this disaster. You are our true friend. Lastly, as the Chief of Maritime Staff, I pledge to continue the Maritime Self-Defense Force effort to strengthen the Japan-U.S. alliance. Thank you.
Admiral, thank you very much for your comments, and I'm sure on behalf of the whole audience here, we really appreciate not only the history of the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force, but many of us have watched you grow and mature and gain tremendous proficiency, and at the same time, we've watched this relationship strengthen, so we really appreciate your remarks. We've got about 30 minutes here, and there's always more questions than there is time. I'd like to take about 20 minutes of that time to ask you a few questions, and then we'll open it up to our audience here for maybe the last 10 minutes. So I'm sure Admiral Daly will let me know when I've crossed my 20-minute threshold here. But let me start with a first question, and you've obviously had a very long and distinguished career, but looking back over that career, what have been the most significant elements of both continuity and change in the Japanese Navy?
Yeah, JMSDF is established in 1952 with succeeding the tradition of Imperial Japanese Navy. What we succeed in is the 77 years Blue Water Navy's history, as well as a constitution to be able to reform with creation for adapting JMSDF to the international security environment. In the other word, it is a kind of a sound awareness to catch the apparent and hidden challenges we are facing for need to the solved, and adapt GMSDF to the new security environment itself. I think that these more than 60 years history is a path that we don't to adapt ourselves to the new security environment without afraid. Do not shrink if we face the necessity to be changed. And to keep, another one is to keep clear and firm benchmark. That is the US Navy itself had let JMSDF find direction to proceed. That US-Japan alliance, we usually face the 7th Fleet. The 7th Fleet, take this direction, we follow that one. As they said, about 20 years since the end of the Cold War era, Japan and the US alliance drifted. However, the relationship between the US Navy and the JMSDF could be sound, because we are always looking at the US Navy. I think that is a continuity, and we have succeeded from the Japanese Imperial Navy itself.
Thank you, Admiral. As you point out, the security environment has changed dramatically, and it's unfolding in front of us today. And certainly your points about the 10th Fleet and cyber and the state of warfare has changed equally. So looking forward over the next 10 years, what could be the new and significant drivers of change in the JMSDF?
I think there are the six drivers. Four of the 6 is overseas factors, and 2 are domestic factors. As for the overseas factors, first one is Chinese rapid modernization its military forces and expanding its influence at sea. And second one, the North Korea, the nuclear and missile development, and the Russian Navy's revived military activities in Far East Asia. And third one is adding to the traditional threat to the security. We have to cope with some transnational threat, such as natural disaster, cross-border crimes, the piracy, and the terrorists, and so on. The fourth is to maintain the tight relationship and the interoperability with the U.S. Navy. I think that it is necessary to introduce the newest technology and tactics from U.S. Navy, such as distributed lethality. Now the U.S. Navy developed, and also need to discuss such issues with using every opportunities. And however, to adjust ourselves, everything to the U.S. Navy is unrealistic. We have to take the selection and the concentration approach when we introduce, especially for the equipment. As for the domestic factors, the first one is aging demography and strict the budget situation. Especially for the young generation is shrinking rapidly in Japan. We are already competed with a private company for recruit. The current Japanese economy is getting well, so such a compete is harder and harder in the coming years. And the second one is also it becomes harder to acquire enough defense capability, both quantitatively and qualitatively, by one country. So the international cooperation with U.S. Navy and other partners is important program in addition to operational cooperation with the U.S. Navy. The international cooperation is, for example, is international joint development or international joint procurement, like that one.
Thank you. Certainly, we are very sensitive to budget issues here in the United States, and you make an excellent point about the demographics having an effect on your ability to recruit the quality force that you're looking for. I think since you brought up technology and another area that laws are changing in your ability to interact in the military-industrial complex, we have a large industrial audience here, and we know that interoperability with U.S. units and equipment is important, as you mentioned earlier. Do you have a message for our industry folks here today on how they can work more effectively with partners such as Japan?
Yeah, I think it is a very good question in this chance. And fortunately, I prepared the paper. It's okay. I think there are some audience who have an image that Japan would become a major export country of defense equipment on new three principles of the weapons, defense equipment, transportation of defense equipment and technology. I'd like to explain three reasons that Japan cannot be that. First, Japan firmly maintains its basic principle and pass as a peace-loving nation, and fully takes into account the laws performed by the former three principles on armed export. New three principles are to establish and present the standard for defense equipment transfer in a clearer way than ever, and as well as in a transparent way to domestic and international public. Japan will get involved proactively in global peace and security contribution and international cooperation by utilizing defense equipment more than before. That is an important reason to establish new three principles. Secondly, the major Japanese defense industry major defense industries' corporate structure are mainly composed of commercial business. The ratio of the defense sector in the whole business is less than 10%. And the defense business it is quite Japanese unique that stand on the fragile balance of supply and demand exclusively for Japanese self-defense force. It seems hard to expect further investment for unstable and unforeseen international defense business. Once this fragile balance is collapsed, the recovery is quite difficult. So Japan defense industry possibly hesitate to step forward for even joint development with US industry. Third is Japanese public opinion is basically against weapons export. Japanese government has to pay special attention to this public opinion. Considering this, I mentioned that how does the US industry work more effectively with Japanese partner? I think there are several items. First one is Japanese defense industry has high-end technologies, but their lack of expertise and experience for the international joint development or the joint study. And the biggest concern is the leakage of technology information. I think the US industry already have much expertise at these areas. So I think Japanese company, if the situation comes, the company that participate in the international joint development, I think Japanese company proactively have to approach to the US industry about these matters. And second one is the Japanese defense industries, its business size is small. And because the defense industry is usually branch companies of the big industry like Hitachi and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. So I think to cooperate with the US defense industries, the best way is as a partner of bilateral development or supplier or some part or the equipment of US made. To conclude, Japan cannot be a key player for the but key partner for the US industries in the future. And what is the priorities? The US Navy, we are now facing the needs, international cooperation needs. First one is we already have the development, bilateral development is Aegis system. We are improved the Aegis destroyer to new one. The Japanese company already participate in the small part of the development. And on the other hand, as for related to the distributed resources, US Navy told to the operation for the distributed one. At that time, that how to connect the vehicles distributed the broad area. I think the network could be the more important to connect such the forces. I think Japanese company is good at the information communication areas. So I think there is a possibility the Japanese company will participate in the joint development and joint production in the dark C4I systems in the future. And I expect through such a bilateral development and bilateral production with the US forces and other US industry and partners in abroad, the relationship between the US Navy and GMSDF becomes stronger than ever.
Let me follow up just a little bit on that, Admiral. We had a conversation over lunch about anti-submarine warfare, and of course, I've got great admiration over the years for your ASW forces. I think at one point in time you had 100 P3s. But if you look at all of the different areas that we're cooperating in right now, strike, amphibious warfare, ASW, I won't list them all. Which are the most important, the most urgent ones for the U.S. Navy and the JMSDF to focus on?
Yes, to speak comprehensively, the JMSDF and US 7th Fleet work together always inside the A2 environment. So I think that we have to focus on such areas, including ASW and ASUW and EW. And in this case, we already have a tight communication, tight relationship with the U.S. Navy. So organically, it is ASW and BMD and the mine countermeasures. And to extend the possible area and function is EW and cyber warfare in the future. And also, the both country has a responsible major powers in the Asia-Pacific region. We have to cooperate together to the capacity building in the Asia-Pacific region. To like that point, I think that we can share the capacity building and multilateral exercise in that area, and also. I think there are many the areas we can cooperate together. However, through discussion, we can prioritize which is most urgent and which is the next.
I'm going to run out of time here, and I know that everybody in the audience would think this was an incomplete discussion if we didn't talk about China. So my question is, what aspect of the PLA Navy modernization growth concerns you the most? I mean, some experts have said that they think that by, say, 2020, the PLAN will, at least on paper, be the second most capable Navy in the world. Could you give us your view?
This is a very important point. Let me speak Japanese, okay? My English is so poor. 中国はアジア太平洋諸国の中で、大変重要な国です。
Yes. Excuse me. Yes, China is a very important country among the Asia-Pacific countries.
中国海軍は海洋安全保障の中で重要な役割を果たすことが求められています。
China is expected to play a significant role in the Pacific security.
すでに中国海軍はソマリア沖で海賊対処に従事をしています。
Already, the Chinese Navy is involved in the anti-piracy operations off of Somalia coast.
その一方で、急速な軍事力の近代化、これは質と量の両面においてですけども、それから透明度の不透明な、それはまあ時々不透明なんですけども、それは周辺国の大きな懸念になっています。
And they are engaged in modernization of their military powers, both quantity-wise, quality-wise. And it is a major concern of the not transparent nature of their armament is a big concern to the neighboring countries.
南シナ海における一方的な現状変更の試みも周辺国の懸念になっています。
Their South China Sea activities to change the status quo of the region is a big concern around the region.
日本の政府の立場は、これらの問題解決は平和的な手段で行うよ、国際法に基づいて行うということが日本の政府の立場です。
The Japanese government stance is that these issues should be resolved through a peaceful method and also according to the international law.
Yesterday, Defense Minister of Japan mentioned that Japan strongly support U.S. freedom of navigation operation in South China Sea. That is my conclusion.
Well, I think that was the same conclusion Admiral Swift had a few minutes ago, so that was a good one. I think we're just about at the 20-minute point, so in fairness to our audience, I'd like to open it up for about 10 minutes of questions from the audience. So we'll do that right now, and anybody that has a question, please raise your hand or go to the mic, and we'll try to identify you and give you an opportunity to ask your questions. I see Admiral Ellis moving to the mic, so.
Admiral Jerry Ellis, former ComSub PAC, but still involved with the undersea warfare business. Admiral Takei, I read in the newspapers, and I've been following it a little bit, and based on your comments, what does the Japanese people feel about Japan perhaps selling submarines to Australia as they rebuild submarines following the Collins class?
Yes, my position is not in charge of this, the submarine, the transportation transfer to the Australia or the bilateral development. However, generally speaking, Japanese people support to conduct the bilateral development of Australia's new submarine with Japanese industries. As you know, Japan and Australia has a close relationship. Prime Minister Abe and you mentioned Australia is a semi-allied country and also strategically important for the Japanese security. So once the Japanese company will participate in such a project, maybe relationship among United States, Australia, and Japan could be better than ever.
Thank you very much.
I think we have a question over here, please, to the left.
提督ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございます。
Before I get to my question, I want to pass along some accolades from a fellow sergeant of mine who was training with your Naval Special Landing Forces. He said they were incredibly professional, men of good character, and every one of them could be a Marine. So my name is Sergeant Edon from the Marine Corps Information Operations Center. The question I have is, the liaison office of the General Political Department of the PRC is trying to execute their three warfare strategy. And one of the ways they do that is through cultivating agents of influence to agitate against any time Japan attempts to exercise your maritime rights. How is the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force continuing to protect the Japanese people against this new form of warfare, the three warfare strategy?
わかります。This is very hard to explain by English, so let me speak Japanese. 中国の3戦、3ウォーフェアへの対抗については、日本の国内で正しい情報が正しいタイミングで伝えられることが重要だと思います。
We find it's very important that a very accurate information at the accurate timing is imperative in dealing with the three warfare that China imposes.
今まで日本では軍事的な情報は公開される、ディスクローズされることは少なかったんですが、近頃は適時適切に行われるようになってきたと思います。
In the past, in Japan, the military intelligence wasn't disclosed very often, but nowadays, at the proper timing and proper place, it's been disclosed a little more.
I think that is the best way, the correct information, right timing, to not only domestically but also internationally, they release such information to the world.
Thank you. Let's move back over to the right, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Eric Thompson. I'm from the Center for Naval Analyses. And as I've been listening to conversations in this conference over the last day and a half, I hear a lot of reference to the design for maintaining maritime superiority, the CNO's guiding document that he's released. And a component of that is high velocity learning. And so when you spoke about the components of maintaining interoperability, a critical pillar is that shared mindset. So what else do we need to be doing bilaterally or multilaterally to make sure, as the U.S. tries to accelerate its learning and its changing, how are we going to maintain that human element of that connection of a shared point of view between our navies?
I think it is a very important question to me. I use 80% of my energy for the human education and personal issues in Japan. So I read the paper of the Admiral Richardson. I'm now thinking how we can catch up with the U.S. Navy's rapid speed running. I like that one. I think it is very hard. Anyway, the Japanese people speak Japanese, not English. To understand how and what the U.S. Navy's the counterpart, I think now is the first time that we understand by English and translate it to Japanese and teach my sailors. I need the time, but it is the homework. It is the work. We have to solve as soon as possible. Anyway, yeah, it is a very good question to me.
I think we've got one question over here to the left, please.
Thank you, Admiral Fargo. Good afternoon, sir. My name is Dan Groot. I'm a retired naval officer. My question is regarding interoperability. Sir, you mentioned many times about the importance of interoperability with the U.S. Navy, with JMSDF. Sir, could you comment about interoperability with the other countries that you may be working with in Southeast Asia?
Yeah, I think that there are a level of interoperabilities that to communicate together. I think the lowest one. Now the Western Pacific Ocean, the navies use queues. It is a code for unexpected, unplanned expectation at sea. It is the tool to communicate together. But the highest one is like interoperability between the US and Japan. We share the common knowledge, we share the equipment, we share the technology and the tactics. And I think that there are a better level in such countries. However, yes, the interoperability could be the key to connect the navies tight. So that you have to improve the interoperability further.
I think we've got time for just one more question here to the right.
Admiral Takei, thank you for being here. I'm Voice of America, Libo Liu here. I have a question regarding what your force can do with the U.S. Navy. Your government has successfully secured a new interpretation of the Constitution. With that out of the way, I wonder what your force can do with the United States Navy in terms of perhaps help maintain peace and stability in the South China Sea.
Security legislation と関係する。
憲法の新解釈ということで、これからのその南シナ海での平和構築にどういうふうに。
Peace and stability in the South China Sea.
Yeah, I am not positioned to talk about whole JSDF, with the Japanese government issues. We are focusing on the Navy areas. No change. We already have a good relationship, but the new security legislation broadened the area the Japanese government, the forces use the forces in case of emergencies. But now the US Navy and JMSDF is conducting operation or the exercise around Asia Pacific. It's no change by the new security legislations, I think.
Thank you, Admiral. This has been very candid on your part. We appreciate you taking questions for 30 minutes. It's also great to see so many people with long-standing ties to Japan here, like Admiral Hayward and the whole group, and we really appreciate all the participation. Thank you very much.
On behalf of Naval Institute and FCA International, we thank Admiral Takei and Admiral Fargo. We have two Naval Institute books, Asian Maritime Strategies, Navigating Troubled Waters by Bernard Cole with FCA bookmarks. And we thank you both again for taking the time and making an extreme effort to come here, Admiral Takei, in your case. You've come so far to share your knowledge with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.